So welcome to the Node.js Community Technical Steering Committee meeting for April 17, 2019. We're going to follow the agenda as posted in the associated issue, which is number 691. So to start off with, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
I could share some small bits. We just put out 8.16.0 yesterday. It includes some NAPI fixes that make the NAPI in 8 more compatible with 10 and higher. I want to thank Gabriel and Anna and everyone who put time in to help make that happen. I'm unsure if we're going to do any more minors. It was, we ended up only doing December minor changes from NAPI because 8.x is in maintenance right now. I know that we are still in the process of kind of discussing long-term support for NAPI and how we want to move forward with that. So if you are listening and have any opinions around LTS and stuff like that, please chime in over at github.com/nodejs/notes.
Okay, any other announcements people would like to make? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the issues tagged in the issue tracker with the TSC agenda. The first one is TSC elections for the TSC chair and CPC representative. This is really just for awareness to make sure that anybody who from the TSC who's interested in either of those positions is aware that the sort of nomination period is open. It's closing on the 22nd, which I think is next Monday, if I remember correctly. Basically it's got a schedule. If you have any comments, concerns, or if you wish to nominate yourself, please chime in there. Any questions before we move on from that?
Not a question, but something that I think is worth stating. When the CPC officially forms, I will no longer be the elected director. The director seat will move to be a CPC director, and then we will, after the CPC forms, have to elect a new director for the technical steering committee. I believe that we have it in the bylaws that the first year that will be something from the Node.js project. Just want to make it pretty explicit that I'm not going to be looking to run for that role again. So anyone on the call or anyone who's maybe interested in doing that, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about what the role is, what it means. But I will not be doing that director role again on behalf of the TSC right now.
I'm just taking some notes. Will not. So basically, you can reach out to Miles for more info. And yeah, at that point, once it's set up, we will, have an issue that calls for nominees and so forth. But yeah, I think in advance, if you are interested in talking to Miles, it's a great idea to get a feeling for what it would be and the context. Okay, so then moving on to the next issue, which is the tracking issue for an update on TSC board meetings. I guess, Miles, that's over to you.
Yeah, so nothing major to report right now. I mean, the majority of things that are happening right now are happening in the weekly CPC meetings. As far as where we're at there, we've primarily identified which projects are going to be impact level projects. They're in the process of identifying and electing their CPC representatives. We're doing some drafting around like bylaws and process for new projects joining the foundation, as well as figuring out like what are the expectations for new projects as well as current projects. Outside of that, the board has, the meetings that we've had have primarily been around reviewing and approving, the budgets and the things that are required to legally move the merge forward. We do have another board meeting coming up next week. So that will be, or no, 2 weeks from now. I'm lost. I thought it was on my calendar and I'm not seeing it. Oh, there we go. I see it now. It will be next Friday, the 26th. This is the next board meeting. So if there's anything that we need to bring to the board or, have handled at the board, please let me know and identify it. And I'll make sure that it's brought up. I will, as usual, have some sort of follow-up about what happened at the board meeting after it happens.
Just writing that down. And then the minutes, you might want to, I think I missed your first point, so you might want to add that one as well. Next thing on the agenda is going through the strategic initiatives. I think I might suggest that we just flip the order and look at the other issue, which is the Node.js Security Working Group HackerOne's Managed Services. Anybody have any objections to that? Okay, if not, then what I'd suggest is let's look at that one. This was opened by Vladimir, basically the context is that we're using HackerOne for the initial triage of our vulnerabilities, both for core and for the ecosystem. And I think HackerOne has a new program they're offering, a pilot program, in which they actually do more, they help out more in terms of doing things like triage and initial work around sort of keeping you up to date and managing the vulnerabilities as they come in. So that might actually reduce some of the load on our triagers. There's some discussion going on in the issue itself. It seems like we're trending towards agreeing to take advantage of that. But I think this is just on the agenda for awareness and to see if there was any additional support or objections, concerns over moving in that direction. So does anybody have any thoughts or views that they'd like to express on that?
Just that there weren't any objections. Matteo was in favor of it. Rod was in favor of it. It's not super clear from the description exactly what services we're gonna get, but I think we're gonna give it a shot. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, we can go back to what we were doing, and if it makes things easier, that's great.
Okay, so sounds like pretty much everybody who's been fairly active in the triage is in favor, and I don't hear any other objections. So I think we can probably move on unless there's anything else people want to add on that issue. Okay, so next issue is the strategic initiatives. Let me just pull that up. So modules. What's new on that front, Miles?
So we recently landed upstream the new implementation. Very exciting stuff. We made a slight change to one of the flags recently. The flag that was entry type is now input type. It no longer works on arbitrary files. It now just works on streaming content in or running execution. Really, really subtle things about like the differences there. If you have more questions, feel free to ping me and ask exactly what's going on. Other than that, one of the big things that we still need to get done is related to how we're going to handle custom loaders. There's a new implementation that we're working on that builds on top of the worker threads, but it has a slow startup and some memory leaks, so we still haven't upstreamed it. Other than that, I think the general intention of the group is hoping to get the new implementation stabilized, locked, and have the flag removed before 12 goes into LTS. We'll still need a bit of time before we know whether or not that goal is 100% accomplishable. But I think it's really important for the ecosystem that we get this going forward as quickly as possible. And we're also examining and trying to make sure that it's something we can backport to 10.
Okay. Okay, on the NAPI front, working through, we still focus on sort of the evangelization. So we've got an effort to put together a workshop that we're hoping to submit to NodeConf EU as well as Node+JS Interactive. We definitely saw an uptick in usage following the workshop we did at NodeConf EU last year. And we figure that, we're at the point where, doing those workshops. So if people have suggestions on, conferences where we might be able to do a workshop like that for a good number of users or module developers, that would be good, because I think, identifying a few others would be nice. Otherwise, we've been spending some time in our recent meetings as well on async worker. There was an issue open that raised a number of issues, and we're working through those issues and coming up with the candidate solutions, making some fairly good progress on that. So we're going to be working through on that, and then otherwise just supporting people who are using it as part of the ramp up. I think we're up to something around 160, 170,000 downloads a week, which is still quite a bit smaller than NAN, but it's showing that there is we're on a good upward trend. The next one is OpenSSL evolution. I don't know if we have Rod. We don't see, no, I don't see Rod, but Sam, do you want to say anything on that front? I gave a sort of update last time, but you can probably do a better job than me.
Okay, I don't want to repeat things. I mean, basically, we've got OpenSSL 1.1, on master. It'll be in 12.x, and it's down in 11.x, and should be in the next 10.x. So that evolution is coming apace. TLS 1.3, I don't think it's gotten a lot of use. It'll show up, I guess it'll be in this latest 11.x. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any reports from the field, like positively or negatively, about its integration. It needs to be explicitly enabled on 11.x though, so I don't know how many people will see that. But it'll be default in 12.x within a couple weeks. And then so that's the first kind of big two steps. Like the first two steps in OpenSSL evolution is getting to 1.1.1. Second one was getting TLS 1.3 support. And then the third step is FIPS. And FIPS basically is going to involve a big refactor of OpenSSL. They're working away at it a lot. It's really hard to judge from outside whether they're going to make this fall timeline. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any way that there's not going to be a FIPS gap for Node.js. So there'll be a time between when 8.x goes out of support and 13 or 14.x gets FIPS support, where Node has no supported FIPS. But there doesn't really seem to be anything we can do about that other than this fall, when the first kind of release candidates or even alphas of FIPS start to arrive in OpenSSL 3.0.0. We should be like right on top of that and starting to build and plan what we're going to do for FIPS as early as possible. That's it.
Okay. I just checking off the notes here. Okay.
And all of that information is in the OpenSSL policy, whatever document in the root of the Node.js TSC.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a good document now there that outlines things, so you can go there for more info. So going through the list just to see who else we have here. Governance, Miles, anything to say on governance?
There's not a ton to say right now. I guess like one thing I could throw out there would be, once the CPC stuff forms, we're going to have to do some governance changes, kind of based on the new relationships that we have. But after that happens, perhaps this is a strategic initiative that we can spin down for a bit. Does anyone object to that? I just don't know that this is something we'll be actively working on after we kind of, realign based on the new foundation's governance. Does that seem reasonable?
You could make the argument that we can spin it down now even, but yeah, certainly spinning it down after that seems reasonable to me.
Yep, I'm in alignment with what Rich just said. It could be now or then, it's fine.
I would rather keep it just so we have an action item, making sure that we're on top of like fixing the things that we know we need to, is my thoughts.
Okay.
You're in control.
Okay. Anything more on governance before we move on to the next thing? No. Okay. New stream APIs. No, sorry. Fiat currency.
Nothing to report on that front.
Okay, so no blockers or anything like that?
No, it's good.
Okay. Good news. No news is good news. Okay. Async hooks. I guess the only thing there is since Ali's taken a sabbatical from the TSC, I don't know if we need another champion, or maybe just invite people to have occasional updates on some of these things if they're not at the regular TSC meetings.
Maybe it doesn't need to be a strategic initiative anymore. Maybe it's, it's important and everything, but lots of important things aren't strategic initiatives.
Yeah, unfortunately, this one's not actually done. And so, I mean, it being a strategic initiative may not have gotten it over the line or gotten enough focus, but it's not one that needs less attention versus more attention unless we decided we just don't need it, because it's still sort of in the in-between state of it's there experimental. We know lots of people depend on it, but it's not done, and there's no clear path to getting out of experimental either.
Fair enough.
Maybe we should move it to need volunteers for to that section.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I mean, the other thing I've thought a bit about though is, do we need? It probably is good to have somebody on the TSC who sort of helps with these things. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can get to, if somebody else doesn't beat me to it, at some point I'll look at a PR to move that to the needs volunteers, needs help. Open web standards.
I was at the ECMA Executive Committee meetings last week, which was very interesting, finding out more about how ECMA itself works. And TC39 was, I guess, 2 weeks before that. I mean, from my own proposals, top-level await is moving forward, and it actually looks like it may be in a place to go to stage 3 for the June meeting, which means that we may even see implementations of it in browsers and run in V8 before the end of the year, which is pretty exciting to me. It may, those changes may come in and be non-trivial in Node, but it is completely isolated to the module goal. So we wouldn't by default be supporting it in CommonJS. That's something we'd have to kind of look into and figure out if we want to support separately from that. Another thing that is getting movement and has been moved to stage 2 for the June meeting is built-ins and built-in libraries. The Chrome team recently did an origin trial for a built-in called Key Value Store. The new temporal library, which is the replacement for the date object, is also looking at using built-ins. Those teams are pushing towards a URL-like scheme rather than like an @ / scheme, which is the way in which NPM currently does namespaces. I'll keep people updated as that kind of moves forward. The MJS standardization at IETF is moving forward. It's a slow process, but it's happening. One thing we're also looking into is just in the new foundation, what kind of partnerships can we have with standards bodies, and will we be able to have representatives from the open source project attending meetings at like W3C or TC39 representing our projects, and figuring out ways to set that up that doesn't undermine the funding models of these nonprofits, because an example of an organization like ECMA has a lot of things that they need to do on the back end to make things internationally recognized as standards, and all of that work is done from the membership fees that they collect. And it's a challenge when we are an organization like the OpenJS Foundation, where we're made up of a number of members that would also arguably be members of ECMA. But we're figuring that out. We're working on it slowly as we have more details to explicitly as we have more ideas about explicitly what's going on. I'll keep people updated.
Okay. Troy, anything you want to add?
No, I think Miles has covered it pretty well.
Okay. So I'm just cleaning up the notes a little bit here. Okay, open standards, Python and JIP.
Few of our build machines, operating systems don't have Python 3 their package distribution systems. So we are figuring out how we can actually install. Build working group is helping us with this. That's it.
Okay, is that because they're like older OSs that were there before Python 3 existed, or is it some other reason why Python 3 is different from other things?
Yeah, those operating systems have long-term support. So most of the softwares in their package management system are very old. The newer softwares are actually not there yet.
Okay, so like newer systems like Ubuntu 18, would it have Python 3 in its package system, but like Ubuntu 14 wouldn't? Is that the?
For example, CentOS 6 doesn't have Python 3 yet, but we figured out a way to install Python 3 there. Same way we have to find out what are the operating systems which have Python 3 and which don't have.
Okay, but like CentOS does?
There is a different way to install it. There is a package called SEL, and then the actual package name is rh-python 3.6.
Okay.
So yeah, it varies from operating system to operating system. So we're trying to figure that out.
Okay. Startup performance.
We have just landed the patch from Rafael to ship Cocache, embedded Cocache on the main thread. So it will appear in V12. So the Cocache issue has now been fixed. Module that we still have not enabled it on cross-compiled builds, but we'll get it. And I've been working on a prototype of snapshot integration. I will be sending patches upstream from my fork. So it's in progress.
Okay. The Cocache one, is that significant enough we should include in the 12.x release?
Yes, but it's just a patch. So there's nothing like stopping it from getting into V12.
Right. No, I was just wondering, like, if it's like we called it in the sort of the press release or whatever goes out, we call it a few of the significant things that are in 12. Is that big enough?
Yeah, maybe because it's sped up like the main thread, like the main thread stuff by about 30%. So I guess is significant enough.
Okay. Would you be willing to write up like a 1-paragraph sort of, hey, new and V12X brings this, and it speeds up startup by 30%, and then we can make sure that,
where should I write this?
actually, I should be able to send you a link, which is the draft. And so if you add it to that, so after the meeting, I'll send you a link through email, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, just good to get that in advance. The whole thing will be shared with the rest of the TSC, but I think it won't be for a few days. So I'll do that for you today, so you can add that in. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds good. And then build resources, Rich.
So nothing much to report this week. I will get together a document, a brief document, probably won't be more than a few sentences, hopefully, describing the problem and listing out solutions that have been proposed thus far. I'll run it by Rod. I'll probably run it by you, Michael, maybe run it by the rest of the build team, and then go from there and try to figure out what we can do to make our build infrastructure and personnel more robust than it's been.
Sounds good. Okay, so that comes to the end of our strategic initiatives, and actually the end of what we have on the agenda for this week. So is there anything else that people want to add on to the agenda? Okay, if not, I think we can call the meeting for this week. If everybody can just wait 1 second while I figure out, I think there's one more person that needs to be added to the panelists. Okay, so we have 9. We said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now we have everybody on the list. Okay, so we'll call the meeting for today. Thanks for everybody for taking the time, and we'll talk to everybody next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.